Which is the worst camera of 2023? Is it a full-frame censored camera, a video camera, or an APS-C censored camera? Well then stick around after this short message as we identify the worst camera of 2023. But first, subscribe to this channel for a chance to win a Canon EOS R5. I'll be giving one away to one lucky subscriber once this channel reaches 100,000 subscribers. Anyone above the age of 18 with a valid mailing address is eligible. Additional terms and conditions are linked in the description down below. Yesterday I published a video where I talked about the best camera announced in 2023. And looking at the cameras that did come out in 2023, I think it's really no surprise from multiple points of view that the Nikon Z8 is the best camera. I mean, after all, it takes a lot of the base capabilities of the Canon EOS R5, but improves upon them with a stacked sensor, 8K 60 frames per second. But in this video, we're going to look at the worst camera of 2023, and on the surface, that might seem like a challenging task. There were a lot of really good cameras that came out this year, but there is one that stands out as truly the worst camera of 2023, and we could probably say it's the worst camera of the decade. But first, let's take a look at a couple of runner-ups. Not everyone was happy with the Sony ZV-1 Mark II, so I added it to the list. Then there's the OM Systems TG7. It doesn't support touch, and it produces poor picture quality compared to that of smartphones. And then, of course, there's the Canon EOS R100. It has the same capabilities as the Canon M50 Mark II, a DSLR, but it removed that articulating LCD. Gone too is the touch capability of that LCD, and to make matters worse, it actually costs more than the M50 Mark II without any improvements or enhancements. So once again, I set up a poll using YouTube's community feature because I wanted to see if my idea of the worst camera of 2023 is aligned to what you're thinking. So let's take a look at the results. The Sony ZV-1 Mark II, well, it only got 14% of the vote, and the OM System scored a little bit higher with 17% of the vote. The Nikon ZF shouldn't even be on this list. Shame on those of you that voted for it as the worst camera on the list when there are more obvious options, and this shows with only 8% of viewers choosing the Nikon ZF. But even more surprising is those of you that chose the Canon EOS R5. I mean, it wasn't even announced in 2023, but it's here to capture that Canon hate level. But in first place, with 54% of votes, with over 1,000 votes cast so far, there's one camera that stands out as the worst camera of 2023, and that's whether you are a Canon customer, a Sony customer, a Pentax customer, a Nikon customer. It doesn't matter what you own, even if it's a smartphone. Looking at this camera, it's pretty clear, and I got to admit, I'm a little bit surprised that the camera didn't get over 60%, but there were enough people that didn't like the Canon EOS R5 and Nikon ZF that it kind of put it over the top. I probably should have just done 3 options for this one here, but the camera, can you guess which one it is that got 54% of the vote saying it was the worst camera ever? Yeah, that's right, it's the Canon EOS R100. Now, when Canon announced this camera, I was a little bit surprised. I was really happy with the Canon EOS R50. Now, this camera offered 6K over sample 4K, and it was the first Canon camera to offer computational stills capabilities. At $679 or $678, it's a terrific camera, and I was really impressed with what Canon did with that camera. So when I was hearing that they were coming out with the R100, a more affordable camera, I was thinking, wow, this is going to be a nice update, not as good as the R50, but a real good bargain. But then when I looked closer and saw that the R100, well, it was basically the M50 Mark II, but instead of having that flippy screen that it had with a touch screen, it was, well, molded right to the back of the camera. You lost that vlogging capability. You lost that flippy screen, which I thought was a benefit to that camera. And not only that, not only did you use the touch screen and the flippy screen, but you actually got to pay more for it. And my advice at the time was that if you were looking and interested in a low-cost camera, don't go ahead and get the R100. Get the M50 Mark II. It's cheaper and it's more capable. It's like Canon took a page out of Commodore when they came out with the idea for the Commodore Amiga 600. And this is going back to the 90s. Commodore wanted to save money and come out with a more cost-efficient version of the Amiga 500. And in a way, I kind of got the sense that Well, Canon gave the marching orders to their engineering team to take the Canon EOS R50 and come out with a more cost-affordable version of that. But instead, what they ended up doing is giving us a camera that unquestionably everybody hates. We see this across across the landscape. You see it on tech reviews, you see it on YouTube channels. Old and new are saying, we don't understand this camera, it doesn't make an awful lot of sense to us. And for that very reason, I'm happy to say that in my vote, it's the worst camera of 2023, 2022, 2021, 2020. I'm going to stop there because there are some doozies from 2019 and 2018. But yeah, the R100 completely shocked me in terms of what it offers the consumer. And what really kind of irritates me about this camera is if somebody who doesn't know a whole lot about cameras is looking to get a better camera than what they have with their smartphone, and they get this, I think it kind of sends the wrong signal. It might get them frustrated by cameras and have them go back to the smartphone. I really do like the R50. I think Canon did a great job with the R50. But not just the R50, the R7, the R10, the R8, the R6 Mark II, and even the R3 and the R5. I would say that these cameras are properly segmented. They're not crippled, whereas the R100, it's even got that old, what, Digic 8 image processor? It's a relic from the past. I think all they did is take the R50, they kept the same innards, maybe made a few changes to reduce the cost of components and circuit boards and that sort of stuff. A new shell, but yeah, no flippy screen, no touch, and for more, not a big fan of that. But let me know what you think though is the worst camera of 2023. I've already looked at some of the comments that people left when I put out this poll, and yeah, there's an awful lot of people that are kind of confused by this camera, and I've talked to a few industry insiders behind the scenes, and they kind of shake their heads too. They don't really understand this camera. I get a sense that this camera kind of fell off the normal traditional Canon engineering and process and checklist system and somehow snuck out the door. You try to find a review that says, hey, this is a great camera. A lot of people will end up saying that if you're looking at this camera, consider what Sony's come out with the ZV-1, not the Mark II, or even the ZV-E1, although it's more expensive. They'll say the R50, they'll talk about the Nikon Z50, but very rarely will people say, get this camera. And if they're recommending sticking with Canon and you want to save a bit of money, then they recommend go with the EOS M50 Mark II, an old DSLR, and you can still adapt RF glass to that. But yeah, I almost didn't want to put this video out there because I hate ragging on things, and I just wanted to leave things with the best camera of 2023 because I think that's a positive spin to go with. And here in 2023, almost every camera that comes out has got some really great capabilities. The Nikon ZF, the Panasonic S5 Mark II and the Mark IIX, the A6700, and yes, it is a rehash of the Sony A7S III that came out in 2020, but it's for a much cheaper price tag. And again, those capabilities of the A7S III are good, solid capabilities. Anyhow, let's just completely forget about this. Christmas is just in a few days. And after that, we're going to have January and February. We're going to have a huge Q1 where we have announcements by Panasonic, Canon, Nikon, Sony, everyone. It's going to be a very exciting year. And of course, from Canon, we're waiting for Canon. Nikon has already done this with their flagship camera. So has Sony. And Canon's finally going to release their mirrorless flagship camera. Wow, 4 years after the 1DX Mark III. And it really kind of completes their lineup. I still think there's room for an R9, a entry-level full-frame mirrorless camera that kind of replaces the RP, because I think when you look at the R8 and you see its price point, there definitely is room for an entry-level camera. But will Canon do that? Is the market big enough to support that camera? Well, we'll just have to wait and see, but it's not going to be in the first half. The first half is about new lenses, Canon primes, as well as maybe a big Sigma announcement, but definitely an announcement and a teaser about the Canon EOS R1 and then the Canon EOS R5 Mark II. And if you're interested in purchasing any camera gear right now, there's a huge amount of sales on, $400 off the Sony A7 R5. It was just announced last year. We've got big sales, $900 off the Canon EOS R5 and the R5C, Nikon sales, Panasonic sales. They're all over the place. The S1H, anywhere from $400 to $1,100 off. The S5 Mark II is also on sale. Please consider using my affiliate links for Adorama, B&H, and Amazon.com. These ones right here, I also have them in the description down below. But if you don't purchase from these companies, then I highly recommend reaching out to your local camera store. My local camera store, the one I go to most of the times, is Downtown Camera in Toronto. And a big thanks to Patrick, who helps me get all sorts of new gear. He loves me spending money, and I love spending money too. So my recent purchase is this guy right here. Let's see if I can pick it up without banging it. Yep, you know what this is? Big hint right here. You just, oh, wrong. There we go. Try to do that a little smoother. Let's do that again. 200 to 800 millimeter image stabilized USM. Incredible lens. It's sunny right now. The forecast is for clear skies right up to midnight. So I'm going to take this upstairs after I've edited this video. I'm going to take it outside with the R5, with my tripod, and I'm going to shoot the moon. It's only a half moon right now, but that should be big enough to be able to see some really good crater details. And especially when the moon isn't completely full, you see some craters that have more contrast on them, and that should allow me to test this lens out, 800 millimeters, and then put on the 2x extender to see how close I can get to see how good the sharpness is. So I'm really looking forward to that. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again soon. And if I don't see you before Christmas, have yourself a happy and a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Cheers, and we'll see you again soon.